So a translation is also called, I'm just going to write it underneath here, it's also called a slide. You could have heard it called a slide, a translation, because all we're doing is sliding it around, right? That's it. Left, right, up, down. So a translation is also called a slide. So it says each point of a figure is moved in the same direction. And in, sorry, that goes on the other line, so it will make sense. Is moved the same distance, and in the same direction. Now the words make sense. There we go. So it's moved the same distance in the same direction, right? And how we write it mathematically, how we write it out, and you will see this, especially if you're, especially on the Aspire, you'll probably see this. It's written this way. As xy goes to x plus a and x plus b. And of course, if it's moving down, it will be minus, or if it's moving backwards, it'll be minus, right? Plus means it's moving forward or up. If it's x, it's moving forward. If it's y, it's moving up. So if it's x minus a, it would be moving backwards. If it was y minus b, it would be moving down, right? Because there's only two directions on the x-axis, it's either forwards or backwards, and there's only two directions on the y-axis, it's either up or down. So plus means up, negative means down on the y, and on the x, plus means forwards, and minus means backwards. So that kind of, because there's only the two directions, that kind of helps out a little bit if you think of it that way. So if I look at my directions that they give me, for example, one, it says xy goes to x. So my x is going to stay the same, but my y is they're doing something to my y. What are they doing? Well, it's minus 3. So that means I'm moving down. Oh, sorry. I hate when I forget to go back to a pin. I'm moving down 3. So my y, only the y is moving down 3. The x is staying in the same place, right? Is everyone okay with that? So for each one of these points, A, B, and C, I'm going to take my point, and my point for A, my point A is 2, 3, right? It's right here, 2, 3. They have it on my graph. I'm just moving the y point down 3. So I can do it on the graph down 3, or I can actually do it from the point. So my point here would be x, right, x, and then y minus 3 is what it says. So my point, now my new point becomes a prime. X stays the same, so it'd be 2, and then I'm going to subtract 3 from y, so that would be 0. Let's see if I move it down over here, right? 1, 2, 3, and there's my new a prime in the same place that I figured out algebraically 2, 0. Okay, so I can either figure it out algebraically or I can do it on the graph. Does not matter which one. And I'm just going to kind of zoom in on that. That one, what we're doing. And remember, I can't name it A because it's not in the same spot. So I put the little apostrophe up there so it becomes A prime, right? And then B prime, I can still do the same thing, right? I'm going to, X is staying the same, and I'm subtracting 3 from Y. So B prime becomes 3, and 1 minus 3 is negative 2. So if I do this, 1, 2, 3, look, it's at negative 2, so that's B prime. And then I draw the picture here. Okay? Any questions so far? Are we okay? And then C prime is going to become 1, and I subtract 3 from that, and I get negative 1. So if I do that, 1, 2, 3, beautiful. It's in the same spot. And if you, as you can see, even though my drawing kind of sucks, it looks like it's the same shape, just shifted down 3 units. Okay, and that's all it is. So let's try and do this next one right here. And what do the directions say is happening this time? Well, to X and Y, what am I doing? Well, to X, I'm adding 4, which means I'm going to go up 4. And to Y, I'm adding 2, which, I'm sorry, I'm not going up 4. I'm going forward 4. And to Y, I'm adding 2, which means I'm going to go up 2. So for each point, I'm going to go up 4 to the forward 4 is 2. Sorry, I have to get my directions right. Is to the right 4 and then up 2. Okay? So I can do it algebraically or I can do it on the graph. It doesn't matter. So, but sometimes it's nice to know how to do it algebraically because they don't always give you a graph when you're doing the, like on the Aspire or any of the tests. They just don't always give you a graph. And sometimes you don't have graph paper to draw them out and make them look nice. So sometimes it's just nice to know, well, I'm going to take this, go back here again. I'm going to take this x, I'm going to add 4 to this, and I'm going to add 2 to this. And well, what do I get? Well, m prime is going to be -5 plus 4 is -1, and -3 plus 2 should be -1. So if I move this point, which is m, forward 4 and up 2, I should land at -1, -1. So let's see if that happens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and look, I land right there. So that becomes m prime. Is there any questions so far? Are we all right with what we're doing? Okay, so again, I'm going to add 4 and add 2. So I'm going to get 2 and 1. So a prime should be at 2, 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2. Oh, sorry, 2, -1. Wow, I added really well. 2, -1. Elizabeth Hernandez. Okay, so that should be a prime. And then again, add 4 and add 2. Let's make sure I can add right this time. So this is 2 and -3. So t prime should be 2, -3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And that looks like exactly where it's supposed to be at. So, and then I'm going to add 4 and add 2. So I'm going to end up at -1 and -3. So -1, h prime. I forgot to put my label there. H prime. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and that should be h prime. And there's my new figure. Okay, questions? Are we okay? Because you guys are going to do this in just a second. I know you can't draw the picture for me, but you can put the coordinates in the chat box. And I expect everyone to put the coordinates in the chat box today because you're getting grades on this. So the properties of translations are the pre-image and the image are congruent. And the symbol for congruent is a little equal sign with a little symbol, little similar symbol on the top of it. So it's congruent, and the resulting image is a slide, right? Because I just took it and I slid it somewhere different. So it's the same size, same shape. Congruent means equal in size, similar in shape. Okay, so corresponding angles are also congruent. So the corresponding angles are congruent and corresponding sides are congruent. The whole thing is congruent. It's all equal. It's just in a different location. Is there any questions on what it means to be a slide or a translation? Okay, now it's your turn. Okay, we'll zoom in on number 1 first. So go ahead and give me the, in the chat, you're going to go ahead and give me the A prime, B prime, and C prime. Okay, go. Remember what I'm doing is I'm going to add 2 and subtract 3. So A prime becomes, let's see, what does it become? 1, -6. So let's, sorry, I should have changed the color. So when I do the graph here, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, -6 is A prime. And then C prime, I'm still adding 2 and subtracting 3. So that becomes B, that's a B. B prime becomes 4, -2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. There's B prime. And again, I'm going to add 2 and subtract 3. So that's 0 and -5. So C prime becomes 0, -5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So C prime. So here's my figure. Of course, my drawing makes them look not the same, but they really are the same. Okay, is there any questions? Are you sure? Okay, so if I'm looking at the next one, I'm going to give you just a few minutes, not as long as last time, to go ahead and label the points, or give me the points for that. Remember, they're not E, F, and G. It should be E prime, F prime, and G prime. And how do you type that into your chat box? It would be E with apostrophe, right? So it'd have the little apostrophe on there. Does that make sense? Kellen, do you see how I got the answers? Did you see how I got the answers? Because your answer, I was like, So this says +2, right? And this says -3. So I'm going to add 2 to the x value and subtract 3 from the y value.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So I'm just going to take those values and subtract them. Same here. This one says, what am I going to do?
Add 2 and subtract 3.
No, honey, the other one. This one here says I'm going to subtract 6 from the x value. And what am I going to do to the y value?
Keep it the same.
Keep it the same, yeah. Okay? So the only thing you're going to change is your x value on this next one that you're doing right here. Okay? Okay, so here we go. I'm going to subtract 6 and then 0. I'm not doing anything to the y because it says the y stays the same. I'm doing x minus 6. So E prime is going to be 2 minus 6 is -4. And the y stays the same, so it's -4, +4. I don't know why I labeled them A, B, and C, by the way. Let me fix that. What the heck? Let's try this again. So this should have been E, F, and G. Okay. So -4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And 4. So this should have been E prime. And, oh, that's +4. Wow, okay. Let's try this again, -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Obviously I can't count here. E prime, there we go. Woo! And then we've got -6 and 0. For F prime, and that's -4 and 1 again, okay? So -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 is F prime, great. -4 and 0, so that's going to be 2 and 4. Oh, and I forgot to put G prime in front of it. G prime is 2 and 4, so -2, I'm subtracting so well today. -2 and 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's G prime. Here we go. And there we go. Questions?
Oh.
Nice, nice, Jonathan. Caitlin, you did almost so good except for A. So do you see what you put for A? Huh?
1/3.
Yeah. Oh, you got it? Okay, good. Because remember, your y doesn't change.
Yeah.
Okay. And you guys remember, if you can't subtract, you can count backwards, right? I've got 2, you can count backwards 6. or you can use your calculator. I don't care if you use your calculator to subtract, okay? Just make sure that you're getting it. Okay, so next, how did I get -6 on E? You mean this -6 right here? This -6 right here? Well, it says I'm subtracting 6 right here, x minus 6. So I subtracted 6, so 2 minus 6 is -4. So I was just following the directions. Roberto, does that make sense? So you just go to whatever the rule tells you to do, and that's where I got the -6 at. Just like on the first rule, it said x plus 2 and x minus 3, so it's adding 2 and subtracting 3. I hope that helps a little bit. Sorry that I didn't see that sooner. Okay. We're going to do reflections now. So now we're going to talk about a reflection. We've moved on from a translation to a reflection. And so first we're going to talk about the description or the rule of a reflection and translation. Wow. Okay, of a reflection. And another name of a reflection is a flip. So a translation is a slide, a reflection is a flip, because the figure is flipped over a line, okay? And there's a couple rules for it. If it's reflected over the x-axis, if I want to go by the rules, if it's reflected over the x-axis, the x stays the same and it's the opposite y, so the y sign just changes. If it's reflected over the x-axis, if it's reflected over the y-axis, that axis the mirror, so the y value is going to stay the same, and the x value is just going to become negative, or the opposite value of whatever it is. Okay, so let's look at a problem here. So I'm going to reflect it over the x-axis, and I'm just going to highlight the x-axis so I know what I'm reflecting it over. So I'm going to reflect it over this axis. So this is my mirror. Remember, a reflection is exactly what that is. It's a reflection. It's a mirror image. So it's if you look in a mirror, supposedly, most of the time, you look like it's the same distance away from the mirror. Your image is the same, looks like it's the same distance away from the mirror as you are, right? So that's basically the principle of a reflection. It's the same distance away from that mirror. So that means A is going to be the same distance away from my mirror, which is my line of reflection, which in this case is my x-axis. So it's going to be in the same distance away. So it's 1, 2, 3 units away from my mirror. So on the other side, it should be 3 units away. Does that make sense? Oh, sorry. There was a question on sorry about that. So let's see, where was I at? Well, we were talking about the mirror image, right? So it's 3 up, so I'm going to be 3 down for A prime. And if I want, I can follow the rule. I kind of have to have my rule out. This is why I sometimes on the reflections and the rotations we're going to learn, I don't always necessarily follow the rules, because sometimes it's just easier to graph them and then flip them over, okay? Because it's just easier to count. It's just easier to count from the mirror than to say, oh, well, it's over the y-axis, so what's changing? Well, the x is changing signs and the y is staying the same. Or the x is staying the same and the y is changing. So sometimes it's just easier to graph it that way and then find the points. For some of them, especially I think the reflection is. And if they don't have a graph for you, you can just sketch out one pretty quickly. Okay, so that means A prime is at the location, where is A prime at? 2, 1, 2, -3. Okay? And B here is 1 above my mirror, so it's going to be 1 below my mirror, and that's going to be B prime. So the location of B prime is still, X is still equal to 3, but now it's equal to -1 because it's 1 below. And C is 2 above, so it's going to be 2 below, so that's C prime. So C prime is still 1, but it's 2 below, so there we go. So notice when I flipped over the x-axis, the only thing that changed was my y value, because that's what's changing. I'm still staying in the x values. Okay, questions? Whew. All right. Oh, now we're going to try and reflect over the y-axis. Which is here. We're doing the same thing, only I think this mirror is a little easier because that's what we're kind of used to looking at, is a mirror that's standing up. And I'm going to reflect over this mirror. Same thing. Everything has to be the same distance away from this mirror. So if M, how far away is M from the mirror? Well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 to the left of the mirror. So that means it's going to be 5 to the right of the mirror. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is going to be M prime. Okay, questions on this? Is there any questions, you guys? Make sure that you're asking. I'm sorry if I caught some of the questions late last time, but sometimes you just have to just say, I have a question, and I'll look up. Okay? So I've got M prime, which is, what is M prime? I think that's 5, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, -3. Okay. And A is 2 away, so 1, 2. So A prime is going to be 2, -3. And T is 2 away, so 1, 2. So T prime. We okay? And H is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. H prime. Oops, I forgot my prime. Is going to be at 5, -5. And then I can just connect my points. And then I have a congruent figure that's reflected over the y-axis. And then I can talk about my preimage and my image are congruent. Right, congruent. Corresponding angles are congruent, and corresponding sides are congruent. Everything's congruent in a reflection. Okay, now it's your turn to try, and I want you to give me the prime. And remember, I'm still this is, you guys are getting credit for this, so you need to make sure you're putting in the coordinates for me. And right now, only 3 people have gotten credit so far. Okay. So, honestly, if you're not sure, sketch out, and I know you don't have the notes, right? So if you printed them out, awesome. But if you can't, let's see. I wonder if I can do this. Can you guys see the whiteboard that I just have up here? Can you see the whiteboard now? Yeah, so say you don't have the notes sketched out, right? And you're trying to reflect this. I would just I just sketch out, right? Here's my axes, right? So I'm just gonna sketch out the points, 3, 4, 3, and I'm gonna draw my little lines so I know where they're at, even though they're not gonna be even, and I think that will help you guys out. 3, 4. Here's my point, right? So this is A. And then B is at 0, 5, which is B right here. And that's B. And then they said C is at where? 1, 1. So there's C. Okay, so here's my triangle. Notice it's not a fancy graph. It kind of, you know, sucks or whatever. That's fine. Highlight, they want me to go over the x-axis. If you don't have a highlighter, sorry, the y-axis, draw squiggly, however you want to know, however, so you know which axis you're reflecting it over. So I'm reflecting it over this one. How far away is A? Well, it's 3 away on this side. That means it's got to be 3 on the other side, right? 3. And it's up 4, so it's got to be right there. So that's A prime. Well, where's A prime located at? Well, it's -3 because I went over 3, and it's still up +4. It's not 3, -4. It's not down here, right? Okay, so it's up there. And then where's B prime at? Well, I'm reflecting over the x-axis, over the y-axis. It's on the y-axis, so it doesn't change at all. So I don't actually have to call it B prime. I can, but I don't have to. It's at 0, 5. That one didn't change. And these C prime's 1 away here, so it's going to be 1 away here. So that's C prime. So my figure should look something like that. C prime is going to be -1, 1. So you can just do a quick ugly sketch. It doesn't have to be pretty, and it doesn't have to be, look, actually the triangles on this one is better than my triangles on my, on the one that does have a graph on it. Okay? So you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be neat. You can just do a really quick sketch. And again, I'm going to put that on here, put this on here, so it'll be on here when we do the notes. So it's A prime, B, C prime. Ketlin, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So both of them can't change signs. Only one of them's going to change the sign. Okay, let's try the second one. So here we go. This time I'm reflecting over the, which axis am I reflecting? Over the x-axis, see? So now this time I'm going to reflect over this axis. Okay, so try that. I'm reflecting it over the, what am I reflecting it over? The x-axis. So that means E is going to go, it's 1 away from my mirror. That means it's going to be 1 away from my mirror here. So this is going to be E prime. So E prime is going to be located still at -3. It's still on the back, on the negative side of the y-axis. So it's -1, -3, +1, because now it's on the top of the y-axis, on top of the x-axis. Wow. Okay. And then F is, let's see, how far down is F? It's 4 down, so it should be 4 up. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the other side of my mirror. So that's F prime. So F prime should be located in the same x coordinate, but now the opposite y coordinate. And G prime is probably going to be the same x coordinate, the opposite y coordinate. So it's 5 and it's up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. G prime. Oh, that was a straight line. And there's what it should look like. So those are my reflections. Nice, Roberto. Good job, Maria. That's excellent. Nice, Jonathan. Okay, so now we're done with 2 of the 3 that we're going to talk about today. And the next one, or the last one about, is the reflection. I'm sorry, the rotation. Wow. And a rotation is also known as a turn. And for me, I actually need to use the rules on this one. I think turns are probably the hardest to do out of the three, well, out of the four, I think turns are usually the hardest to do. So if I was going to memorize any of the rules, it would be these three rules. And it's a rotation is the figure is turned about a fixed point. Okay. So, and we're only going to worry about it being turned around the origin. So we're going to turn it around the origin. If it's not around an origin, it's around a point, I would slide the figure over. So however far that point is away from the origin, I would slide it so it's in that position to rotate around the origin and then slide it back. That's kind of how I do it. I do it in two separate points if it's not about the origin. Just kind of helps out a little bit, I think, to think of it that way. But right now we're only doing it around the origin. In case you don't know where the origin is, it's 0, 0, right? Okay. So the three rules that we need to take into consideration is 90 degrees clockwise. Okay, remember clockwise is going this way, the way a clock goes. And what happens is my X and Y switch positions, and the X becomes the opposite sign. If it's 90 degrees counterclockwise, and it will say if it's clockwise or counterclockwise in the directions, by the way. If it's counterclockwise, the X and Y still switch directions. So in my rotations, if it's 90 degrees, my X and Y flip positions. My X becomes my Y, my Y becomes my X. If it's clockwise, the X changes direction, changes signs. If it's counterclockwise, the Y changes signs. Okay? Kind of rough. And if it's 180 degrees, then all that happens is both the X and the Y change signs. They stay in the same position and they just change signs. So we're going to kind of talk about the different, we're just going to kind of do this, keeping these rules in mind because, well, we're going to keep these in mind and then we'll talk about why in a minute. So let's look at the first one. So it's 90 degrees clockwise. And so we're going to use this rule right here. Okay. And I'm going to rewrite it over here. So basically, the rule says if it's 90 degrees clockwise, it means my X and my Y are going to go to Y negative X. Okay? See what that says? Oh, sorry. See what that says? X, Y goes to Y negative X. My Y's change signs and my X becomes negative. So if I have this here, I'm just going to do it from the rule. I'm just going to use the rule. Okay, my X and my Y change position. So here's my Y, it becomes my X. And my X becomes my Y, but I change sign. So it should be 3, negative 2. And let's see, where's 3? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And this should be A prime. A prime. And I'm going to show you, I guess, kind of how I think about it. So if you always start at the origin, how do I get to my A point? Well, I go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, right? And so how you rotate it is you switch the direction. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So it was going over 2 and up 3. Now I go over 3 and down 2. So I just kind of take those directions, the rise and the run, and the run and the rise, and I switch them. It's just, that's how it works. It's kind of hard to describe. I'm so sorry that I'm kind of out of loss of words to describe that, but that's how it works. So if I'm going to just count over 1, 2, and then up 3, 1, 2, 3, how do I get to that point from the origin? I go over 2 and up 3. Well, I'm going to switch them. I'm going to go over 3 and down 2. And if I can draw a line to each of these points. Now I'm going to erase these lines in just a second, but I want to show you this. If you look at this, can you see that? This forms a 90-degree angle. So that's how I know that it's turned 90 degrees, that forms a 90-degree angle. So that kind of helps a little bit. But that's how this works. And it's easier for me just to follow the rules, I think. So for B prime, and I'm just going to tell you it's easier for me just to follow the rules. So I try and have, when I'm doing this, like a little notes that say rotations with the rules next to it when I'm doing this. And since you guys can have notes with you, you can have those little notes next to you with the rules. So my X and Y change. So this is my Y, it becomes my X. This is my X, it becomes my Y, but I also need to change signs on it. So it should be 1, -3. But if I look at B, I go over 1, 2, 3, up 1. So I'm going to go over 1, down 3. And that becomes B prime. And C prime, switch my X and Y. This is 2. Change this one, -1. So to get to C, I go over 1 and up 2. So if I go over 2 and down 1, that takes me to 2, -1. And there is my figure rotated 90 degrees around the origin, clockwise around the origin. Okay. This one's a little harder to see. And then this one says we're going to rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise around the origin. So counterclockwise, my rule says I take X, Y. Again, I'm going to switch them. Becomes Y, X. But my Y is negative this time, not my X. Okay? So counterclockwise means I'm turning this way. Okay, so M prime, this is my X, it becomes my, I'm sorry, that's not my X, oh my goodness. This is my Y, it becomes my X, and I change the sign on it, so it becomes +3. This is my X, it becomes my Y. So +3, -5. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. M prime. And how do I get to that point? Well, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. And so I'm going to do the opposite direction. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So I'm just counting in the opposite direction. A prime. This is my Y, it becomes my X. Change the sign. This is my X, it becomes the Y. It stays the same. So 3, -2 becomes A prime. I think I should have put that on the other side. A prime. T prime. This is my Y, it becomes my X. It's positive Y. This is my X, it becomes my Y. There we go. Oh, I should have left it on the other side. Sorry. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. T prime. Okay. And then H prime. This is my Y, it becomes my X and changes signs. This is my X, it becomes my Y and stays the same. 5, -5, H prime. So there is my new figure right there. And then on the last one, they're having me rotate it 180 degrees. Well, my rule for 180 degrees is I'm going to take my X, oops, that should just be a comma. Sorry about that. Let's try this again. My X, Y becomes -X and -Y. So if I'm rotating 180 degrees, the rule says my X and my Y stay the same. They just switch signs. So here, A prime should become -2, -3. That does not look like a 2. So -2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And same thing, I get over there going 2 over 2 up 3. Now I'm going to go back 2 and down 3. I'm going to do the opposite of both of them. So B prime is going to become -3, -1. 3, -1, B prime. And C prime is going to become -1, -2. -2, C prime. There we go. C prime. Questions? Okay. So I want you to go ahead and find the coordinates as it is rotate 90 degrees clockwise around the origin. So go. Okay, my rule says, where am I going to write my rule at? I'll write it up. Oh, geez, there's not a lot of room. I'll write it over here, I guess. XY becomes -YX. So because it's 90 degrees, my X and Y switch, right? And then one of the signs are going to switch because it's counterclockwise, it's the Y. If it's clockwise, it's the X. So my Y is going to change. So it's A prime. My Y becomes my X, and it changes sign, so that's 3. And my X becomes my Y, so that's 2. 3, 2. B prime. My Y becomes my X and changes signs, and my X becomes my Y. And then C prime. My Y becomes my X and changes signs, and my X becomes my Y and stays the same. So I've got 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. That's A prime. -1, 2 is B prime. And C prime is 2, C prime. Oh, B prime is in the wrong place. That's not it. It's -1, +2, C prime. So there we go. Sorry about that. All right, and then the practice number 2 says we're going to rotate 180 degrees. Well, I'm going to write the rule down for you. The rule says if it's 180 degrees, the X and the Y stay in the same place. They just change signs. So if you can go ahead. Okay. Since it's 180 degrees, I'm just going to change the signs on both of them, and they stay in the same place. So E prime becomes -4, -4. F prime becomes -4, -2. And G prime becomes -1, -3. So if I plot those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's F prime. Oh, sorry, E prime, F prime, wow, G prime. Here's what it looks like.